I mean, it's kind of like the name of a designer, isn't it? Amanda Abella. It just like rolls off the tongue.
It totally does. I 100% agree with that. Well, I'm super excited to have you here. For those of you that are already on, hello and welcome to today's episode of Her Talk Show. This podcast is dedicated to the growth mindset. You see, I believe that I know something that you don't know, and I also believe that you know something that I don't know. And the only way for us to actually rise in our knowings is to sit in a room, talk about all the things, and plug all those holes of misunderstandings or unknowings. For those of you that are new to this show and love inspirational content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in.
We come to you every day with the best speakers, relationship coaches, spiritual mentors, trailblazers, business owners, authors, young hustlers, podcasters, entrepreneurs, fitness trainers, therapists, financial advisors, and more. We ask our guests one question. What do you know that I don't know? Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Hello. For those of you jumping on live, thank you so much for being here. For those of you jumping on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love. However you are watching us or whenever you are watching us, if you could do us a huge favor and if you could share this video wherever you're watching us at so we can get more eyes and more ears on this awesome content. Listen, we have had over 400 women grace this stage, and we are adding another one to the list. Thank you so much for being here. Again, awesome content. We are always looking to have you thinking outside the box. Today, we have an amazing guest. Super excited to have her here, Amanda Abella. She is an award-winning content creator, keynote speaker, and business coach who specializes in helping business owners activate their persuasion prowess. Whoa, yes, girl. So they can make more money and live a more affluent life. Her clients go from hating sales and marketing to achieving 90% close rates and closing multiple five-figure deals. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Huffington Post, Business Insider, Entrepreneur, and many more. We're super excited to have you here. Welcome, Amanda.
I'm super excited to be here. Girl, that intro is fire.
Yes,
I was back here like getting pumped up, like, yes.
We bring the fire here at Her Talk Show. I'm so excited to have you here. Listen, the ladies who come on the show, they just get it. You know, they understand how important it is to share all the goodness, to share some value, to really help us rise. There's so much stuff, right? There's so many things that are always kind of getting bombarded at us. We don't know which way to turn and which way to go. And tons of just unknowing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing that up. I was like, is there something going on with the planets or energy or something? Because what you just said, I've been noticing, but like on extra levels.
Yeah.
Lately. Yeah, the confusion, I'm getting so much information thrown at me. Which way do I go? I found that a lot of people are forgetting that they have self-agency and that they can, filter out the information and make decisions accordingly. So interesting that you start off that way, because I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. I think also an issue that I have at least come across is there's so many individuals that are speaking the same thing. And when you want to start a business, you feel like you have to do it totally different. So I feel like sometimes people just sit in their room and like close the door for like 8 hours. And they're like, how can I say the same thing and get like similar results, but like do it totally different so that it seems innovative? And then that's what's confusing people is like, so many different ways of doing the same exact thing. I think one of my favoriteest things was like pick a vehicle, right? You can rollerblade, you can skateboard, you can ride your bike, you can take a car, you can take a jet, you can take a helicopter. Like they're all going to get you to the same place, but like different paces, different ways, different means of like energy. And you just got to pick one. Like, you can always switch up the vehicle.
Well, it's so interesting that you bring that up because we have a new client and she was in a situation. So I'm a sales trainer. It's mostly what I do, but I've been talking a lot more about sustainability, scaling, trading less time for money, because we have to fix that problem, then we can start talking about sales process, sales skills, sales systems. So a lot of times we have to help our clients restructure their offers. And I'll have a lot of women coming to me. I've seen it with a few men, but mostly with women, where it's just so much overworking and overdoing and so much like insanity. No, I don't want to say insanity, but like so much running amok in their heads for lots of reasons, right? It could be there's a lot of information. It could be they're in life transitions and life changes. Who hasn't been in one of those in the last 2 or 3 years? And then kind of what happens is there's so much noise going on up here that they completely forget what you just said, yes, which is I can always change it. If it doesn't work, I can make an adjustment.
How many times have you pivoted in your business? I'm curious.
Oh my gosh, I think I'm in the middle of one now.
Yes.
I can't even tell you. God, we'd be here forever.
And then how many times have you changed your elevator pitch to meet your pivot?
I've probably refined it. Oh, I'll give you an example, right? I can give you an example from right now, because I think sometimes people hear pivot and they think they have to like burn everything to the ground and start over, which I have done. I burned my first business to the ground, to the one, because it just wasn't serving me anymore and where I was trying to go and what I was trying to do. But, you know, it's also been little tweaks and adjustments, right? Like little moves like this. So I was literally just teaching our master. Back. All right. Clearly, StreamYard is not liking the really good camera, so we're going to do this. I tried to bring out the best camera for you, but StreamYard is not liking it for whatever reason. So
I love it. The last thing we heard was I just started teaching a master.
Oh, I was just teaching my mastermind clients about this yesterday, just little tweaks and pivots in messaging. And one that I did now, for example, is like I'm still teaching sales training, right? I'm literally selling the same program. I've just changed the way that I talk about it to attract a different kind of audience who still has the problem, but they have it in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I love how open you are about that. I think so many times, especially in the female realm, we have a hard time saying like, hey, I'm doing things a little bit differently and I want to switch it up a little bit. We feel like once we pick a path, we have to like stay down that path.
We think we're married to it forever.
Until the day we die. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
God, we put so much pressure on. Well, I mean, I never did this because everything was just a giant experiment to me anyway, especially the first decade. And sometimes I forget, hey, this is still a giant experiment. I have to remind myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I notice that all the time. We'll see it with our clients and they'll stress themselves out so much over offers or messaging or marketing. And I try and tell them like, guys, this is going to change in a year. Yeah. It's going to change in 2 years. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to get data. You're going to get bored. And I posted about this the other day where I'm like, the universe is constantly expanding. It's always changing. We're constantly going through cycles. Why do we humans think we're somehow not subject to this?
Yeah. 100. Definitely. So I want to ask, you've done a lot with your journey as far as business, entrepreneurship. When you look at it as a whole, what do you feel is like the number one lesson that you've learned? Like, what's your biggest takeaway that you could share with the audience?
Epigenetics is real. And at some point, it's going to show up in your business. So I will explain the story. One big giant realization I had, and actually you could probably speak to this, is when a lot of people start businesses, whether we realize it or not, oftentimes we're either chasing something or we're running away from a trauma. Well, that was me. And I did not know until I had my first 6-figure month, literally regressed and went backwards, and came to find out about 4 months later that I basically triggered a ton of ancestral trauma because I was basically having a trauma response, not because of something that I went through, because I was born in the United States, first world country, the whole thing, but because of what my family went through fleeing the Cuban Revolution. So what started happening was, long story short, My family lost everything. So like we weren't super wealthy, but there were doctors, there were lawyers, there was some real estate in the family, stuff like that. Cuban Revolution comes in, everything gets ripped from everybody. Lots of drama. We have family members who were political prisoners, others who had to flee the country or they were going to be killed. My grandfather was put in prison for owning a pig. Then he had to work 3 years of hard labor in sugarcane fields in exchange for an exit visa. So that's just a little bit of the stories. There's way more than that once you throw in all the aunts and uncles and cousins and things. And what started happening was I started making more money very quickly, and I started feeling more unsafe. It triggered panic attacks.
Oh my gosh, this is so crazy because this is happening to me right now. And I was actually planning on talking to you about this. I cannot even believe you are talking about this right now.
Synchronicity, girl.
Oh my gosh, keep going.
So what happened with me, I'm going to interview somebody who helped me through this. And actually, she's doing something. I'll invite you to it. But I went 4 months wondering, what the hell is wrong with you, Amanda? Granted, I want to be fair to myself. I was in the middle of a trauma response and had no idea. I had a lot of family stuff going on. My dad was ill and in and out of the hospital at the same time. And my business was going through what one of my mentors calls the hit by a bus test, which is it's scaling really, really fast. You're having a trauma response. There's a lot of difficult life situations going on at the same time, and you don't have the systems and team to support it.
Wow.
It was a cocktail of shit.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went 3 or 4 months thinking there was something completely wrong with me. I tried traditional therapy. It was too damn slow, and I don't like being coddled. So like the mother energy was not working for me. Because I'm I like to have difficult conversations and go deep and just rip the Band-Aid off and move on. I'm like, let's go in like a surgeon and just like rip the thing out. That's my style. So the traditional talk therapy wasn't really working for me because I'm like, what the fuck? Like, sorry if I can't curse, but
No, you can curse.
Okay, I just realized I forgot to ask, but I was like, what the fuck? Like, it just wasn't doing it for me. So I was going around like, why are my panic attacks being triggered? Am I waking up with feeling like I have a boulder on my chest? Granted, like I said, stress, dad in and out of the hospital. So that wasn't helping the situation at all. And it's like my brain shut off. It's like I knew what to do, but I had no will to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or my energy was so scattered that I didn't know necessarily how to focus it in. It was literally like parts of my brain and my intuition shut off. And I'm a very intuitive person. So when your intuition feels like it shuts off, like, forget it. I mean, it's a horrible feeling. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And then synchronicity, grace of God, whatever you want to call it, I meet one of my mentors. And I was going to interview her for my podcast. And her whole thing is neuroscience. And she starts talking about what she does. And I was like, can we just like put a pin on this podcast? And do you take private clients? I think I need to work with you because I think there's something wrong with my brain. My anxiety is being triggered. I have no will to do, like I know what I have to do and I just have no will to do it. My energy feels scattered and all over the place. I'm self-sabotaging left and right. I don't understand what's going on. I think there's something wrong with my brain.
Wow.
So I was self-aware enough to know that I was acting very out of character. And I regressed, man. It was like, oh, you just made a lot of money. Here's an $11,000 bill from another state for an employee you had for 2.5 minutes. I was having hiring issues, clients from hell. Like the whole thing was just like blowing up all at the same time. So I start working with her. She does an intake. We worked together for about 6 months, and there was a lot of stuff that she put me through. But literally in the first, they do like a family history. And the first 20 minutes, she goes, did you know you have survivor's guilt? And I said, what? What do you mean? And she goes, you just did this whole intake form and talked about your whole family history and like how everybody lost everything. They had to start over in new countries. Your dad was literally sent on a plane to the United States by himself, right? Then at the age of 11. Then there's the whole like survival stuff that comes with it. So it's not only like we were doing good and everything got ripped from us, including our own country, and we haven't been able to get it back. It's also, well, now we're starting over in poverty in a new country where nobody speaks the language and all the survival programming that comes with that. So what happened was, even though I didn't live through that, my parents and grandparents did. So, and great grandparents. So I was around those stories all the time. And I grew up in Miami. We're practically neighbors. Everybody in Miami has a story like this. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is totally normal. Yeah, everybody's family fled a revolution.
Wow.
Or fled some craziness in order to get to the United States, because Miami's basically a city of immigrants. So if it's not Cubans, it's Venezuelans or Colombians or Eastern Europeans, whatever.
Yeah.
So this didn't start hitting me until my 30s, right? And she goes, you have survivor's guilt. And then she started saying, like, kind of what that pattern was. I was talking to her last week, and she was, a year ago, you were literally in the middle of a PTSD response.
Wow.
Right? And it was literally like me, my body and my mind playing out what had gone on with my parents and grandparents. She goes, you literally feel like you're being waterboarded the more money that you make, because A, you grew up with the story that money equals anxiety. But number two, you literally would have had a target on your back.
Wow.
And because even a little bit of success, there's a target on your back in
Wow.
a communist system, right? In a communist dictatorship. And then number three, the other thing that was going on was, every time I would start doing very well, I would start feeling guilty. And the thing was that for 10 years, it wasn't that big of a deal, and I could just push it to the side. But I make 80 grand in sales in a week. Things are moving really fast. There's a lot of pressure going on in my life. And that voice got so freaking loud. And I just, like, nothing was working. The meditation wasn't working. Like, all my coping mechanisms, none of them were working.
Yeah.
None of them.
Wow.
So she explained survivor's guilt. And she goes, you grew up with a pattern where your family couldn't let it get too good, because they literally left everything behind, including family and countrymen, everything. So there's kind of this idea of, like, why are we the lucky ones? And I was like, holy shit, that's exactly the tape that plays in my head when I start doing very well. And the crazy part is, I don't remember, maybe my grandparents did, I don't remember, but I don't remember anybody explicitly saying that in my family. But I did see the pattern played out and acted out as soon as she said that. So what was happening, I was recreating the same thing in my business, where I literally felt unsafe. So all my safety programming started coming up. And then what happened, I literally manifested a bunch of things to take the money away.
Wow.
Because that's what happened to my family. And then, the anxiety was being triggered because I felt unsafe and like I had a target on my back.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So what does someone do? I mean, there's people watching live right now. There's people that are going to be watching this on the replay. They're resonating with what you're saying. How do you?
Oh my goodness.
The steps?
Well, I think number one is get help. So I was interviewing one of our clients, Karanda Adair, a couple weeks ago about this, and she was talking about her family history. Like, epigenetics is real. Like, people can poo-poo it all they want, but this stuff lives in our DNA.
Wow.
And she was explaining kind of like what her community goes through sometimes, that because they were slaves, then they struggle in business sometimes to ask for money, because it's like, yeah, we worked for free for 400 years. So we feel weird, and she was explaining that, and she was talking about that. And we were, sharing our stories, and she says, well, you said something very important, which was, you asked for help. Like, you went out and you looked for help. And she brought up something interesting where the thought had never occurred to me, but I could see this going through most people's heads, which is, we start going through stuff like that, and maybe we start dropping the ball, and then we just start blaming ourselves. Like, oh, I should be doing better. I should just push through this. I'm sure I tried to do that and it just didn't work. But once I saw the help that it was in front of me, I went for it.
Wow.
I went for it. And I feel like a lot of people don't, because it's like a pride thing. We should have this figured out. We should be strong. In the United States, we have that rugged individualism culture that is great and also has a shadow side. And that's part of the shadows, is we don't ask for help.
Yeah.
So for some people, it could be therapy. For me, emotional freedom technique worked really well. Toning sounds also worked really well. Hypnosis, I've done it all. But it was under the guidance and direction of somebody who could guide me through it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So when you feel that anxiety or vibration or whatever your verbiage is for that, what do you do mentally in order to subside that?
How trippy can we get here?
Very trippy.
Okay. All right. So first thing I want to do, and I learned this last year, was I used to just kind of mentally do it, which is great. I think we do need to have a mental discipline to, switch the tape going on in there. But when I was going through that, there was no amount of like I couldn't even do the mental switch. Even though I was it was so hard. Like I could not switch it no matter what I was doing. So now when I feel stuff coming up, well, I'm going to backtrack. I started putting me first again. How about we start there? And so that mentor was like, well, what did you used to do when you were a kid? And I was like, I used to like go swimming every week and like paint. She goes, okay, go do that. And I'm like, what? Like, shouldn't I be like closing the sale right now or something? She goes, go do what you used to do when you were a kid. And now I've had for a year a habit of, I picked up a paintbrush again after not having done it in a decade. I'm swimming all the time, either at the beach or at a nearby pool with fresh water. So that was number one, is I started putting me first. And I also made a decision that there was no way in hell that I was going back to doing life and business the way I was doing it before.
Okay.
So I think start there, right? Like prioritize you, put you first. And I think that's important to have those foundations, because how many of us are running ragged? Okay, so we reset first, right? Then now it's kind of like maintenance mode, kind of. So like I got triggered by something yesterday. Okay, let me start the rounds of tapping, because it literally reboots the nervous system. There's like a physicality to it too. It's not just like, oh, I changed my brain. There's a certain physicality to how you're feeling. And I found that very helpful.
I love that.
Yeah. Like I had to get it in my body too.
So literally tapping, like you start to feel it, you sit.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the meridian point. So the way that tapping works is you would kind of do a sort of like 1 to 10, right? Like how bad is this anxiety right now that I'm feeling about this particular situation? And then you start going through the rounds. So like, for example, what's one that they had me working on back then? Even though I have this business debt because I made dumbass decisions, right? Well, I was in the middle of a trauma response and I'm still holding myself, like I'm still making myself feel like shit about it, right? I completely love, accept, and forgive myself. And you just start there. And then you just start going through the rounds of the meridian points. And even just doing this, your body starts to calm down, your nervous system does. And then you go through the negative rounds, right? And one thing I learned is when you start yawning, like I'm about to, right? It means you probably processed something.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard this before.
Yeah. I learned that from them, right? Like you start processing. You're moving energy, right? It makes total sense. And then you start on the more positive rounds to kind of rewire it. But like, just get it all out, right? Like get the emotions out. I think, and then I'm going to get trippy, but it has to do with the emotions, because part of what happens is like we resist it instead of just dealing with it.
Yeah.
So if you want to call yourself like I just watched Real Housewives of New Jersey, so like a garbage can whore, like, because you're that mad at yourself over like just go for it, right? But do the rounds, right? And then start taking your power back with the positive rounds. Now the trippy part, I did not learn this from them. I actually found this more recently, and I haven't really talked about it publicly yet, but I've shared it with a couple clients. I found a book called Busting Loose from the Money Game.
Okay.
If you look at the cover, it looks like the corniest shit ever. It's like, what kind of online marketer put this together? Yeah. But inside of it, it starts talking about like quantum physics and all that stuff. And it brings a little bit of the science into it. So it starts off kind of slow because of the science that they have to kind of explain. But basically, it's like we live in a freaking hologram. Right? Like you create everything in your experience, you've created in your consciousness. And then the whole point is to take your power back from it. So one of the exercises that they have, and I actually quite enjoy this, and I've been playing with it, and I'm like, dang, I've been playing with it, is like, let's say I'm stressed out about the bank account. Really common, right? Oh my God, I'm not making enough money. Oh my God, where are the sales going to come from? You know, that anxiety that we all feel at some point because money is so tied to our survival. So there goes all our safety programming, just like coming at us. So really get into it and feel, I was doing this last night, really getting into it and feeling the emotions and then taking your power back from it. And in that book, it kind of like walks you through a script, but it's basically reminding yourself like, hey, my consciousness created this. This is all hologram. It's all a game. Science is catching up to this. So it's not like woo-woo, airy-fairy stuff. Science is catching up to it, quantum physics specifically.
Okay.
And just remembering, like, I am the creator. Like, I am the presence of God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, energy, whatever, doesn't matter. And it expresses itself through me. And then taking your power back and then starting to see life as more of a movie instead of things either constantly attacking you or constantly benefiting you, I guess is another way of putting it.
See life as a movie.
Yeah. So like you go to a movie, this is the way the book explains it. You go to a movie, it's on a screen. It feels real, but it's not real. And when you look back behind the movie, the amount of effort and work that would go into creating, for example, they literally use the example of Golem, his hair, and the amount of money and work and everything that went into it in order to make it seem real, but it's not real. So basically that's us. We're powerful beings. Look at all the work and energy we put into making all this stuff real. Like, we're pretty fucking powerful if we can do that.
It sounds like anybody can do this.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. I love that. You know, so I like the stuff that connects the body, because for me that was very helpful to just ground it into my body instead of having it all up here. But that's a book I read recently, and then you just you kind of start playing with energy, right? So I started doing that. I'm like, oh shit, I doubled my sales this month, and that was really easy. And that was like an issue I was having a year ago. Or there's a client that I told him about this book, and he read it and he was doing it. He goes, Amanda, I just got my credit card increased by like $2,000, even though I have like this history and a bankruptcy and a whole thing. I just got an email that's like, oh, here's an extra $2,000.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because suddenly it's like you start realizing, like, wait a minute, I'm creating this.
Yes. And then you're the character.
And I'm the character, and you're a character, and that cat right there is a character. It's all a character. And like a lot of Eastern philosophy talks about this. So it's like not new. It's just that science is catching up to it.
It's almost making me think of those books when we were growing up, Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, you're choosing your own adventure.
Yeah, and then you're just like less triggered all day long. So what? And when I was reading it, I probably had some resistance to it, but I'm like, wait a minute, like, I don't even have to believe all of this. It's just like, is this going to be productive so I'm less triggered all day long? Then great.
Yes. Wow. Where do you think is, first of all, do you work with predominantly women, men, or does it matter, all humans?
I work with humans. I market to women because I realized like men had their resources for sales training. And the funny thing that happened is when I really started going in on that, more men wanted to work with us.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, I think everybody just needs to kind of like balance out a little bit, because the women get the whole like manifesting, marketing, attraction, but like nobody taught them how to close a sale. And then the guys get the one call close, like, you know, like get the credit card now, and everybody just needs to
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I grew up I was doing door-to-door sales for a really long time, and the biggest thing with that was go backs aren't greenbacks. So like you have to get it right there at the door, right then there. So when I switched over to online marketing, it's a little different. You have to kind of like massage a little bit. And a lot of times the sale comes, 2, 3, 4 calls or messages or, emails or drips or whatever.
Podcasts or whatever. Yeah.
But I remember when I first got into this and talking to individuals and being like, go backs aren't greenbacks, close it on the first. People are like, dude, that's not how it works necessarily. Here in this, and I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
but
interesting.
I still play with it a little bit.
I do.
Yeah.
No, I'm still a closer.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's kind of, I do it exactly how you said it, as far as it's all just a game. It's all just an experiment.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like everything that I've done is an experiment. I used to say that about my son with the way that I raised him. I'm like, I was just like experimenting. I don't know. And then it turned out great. So
yeah. I mean, we probably still teach this, but when I was doing primarily most of the sales training before I had trained my team on how to do it, I would tell people, I was like, guys, if you've never done sales before, just go into this like it's a social experiment.
Yeah.
And then these humans aren't going to piss you off as much.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
It's just that's an interesting behavior. Why did they do that?
Yeah.
You know? And then you just don't get easily, because I think with sales, it's like we open ourselves up to rejection all day long. And most people don't like being rejected.
Definitely.
So we have to find ways to just kind of change the perception so you can get past the difficult part of it and the resistance of it until you realize, oh, this is actually fun and not that hard. And then you start mastering it.
Yeah. So can I ask, as far as your lineage with sales, because obviously you didn't just like get into online entrepreneurship and then just like become a closer.
Yeah.
You've gone through some stuff. Can you tell us all the awesomeness you've done in your life as far as
my gosh. Well, I've been in sales for 15 years. So my first sales job, as I affectionately call it, was I was doing fundraising for a nonprofit on Miami Beach during my hot girl summer back when I was 20. Oh, girl, yes, clubbing all over.
I love it.
Lots of good-looking men.
I love it.
So my hot girl summer on Miami Beach, and then what happened was I also had a job in college where I was doing tours of like why this place exists, so we could get donations, which is sales. So basically spent 2 years fundraising, not knowing I was doing it in 2 different jobs. And then I graduated in 2010, can't find a job, great time to try and find a job. That was my first foray with panic attacks, was back then. And I was like really sick and I had to take a medical leave of absence from school. It was a whole thing. That's a whole other story. But that's how I knew the panic attacks were just on their way back, because I already knew the signs. So what happened was I was really struggling, and a friend noticed, and he was like my cousin, and he was like, he made money in all these unconventional ways. Like he would buy like Starbucks packets and then just sell them for a profit on eBay, like the seasonal ones and stuff like that. And he did all the travel hacking stuff, and he was traveling all over the world for free. And I'm like, dude, what do you do? Like, how do you make money? Like, I'm so confused. And he handed me a book, and the book was The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Guillebeau, which was basically like, why go to school and get a job? You could just like do your own thing online. And it was just the beginnings of that. And I was like, why did nobody ever tell me this? In retrospect, because I have immigrant parents who got out of poverty in a new country, and immigrant parents are like, go to school, get a job to survive. That's why I never heard that. And so I Googled how to make money writing. That ended up turning into an 8-year career. It started on the side. I did have jobs, right? But basically an 8-year career where I would end up doing content marketing for financial companies, and I had to pitch every day. So that started on the side, right? For the first few years, I had jobs. My first job was out of college. I was in English. Like, I taught English as a second language to Spanish non-English speakers. So that was like literal presentation skills and all that stuff. And then I got a job working for a recruiting agency. Well, what is recruiting, Sabrina? Sales, right? I was doing outbound calls every day, and the qualifying thing. I started as the receptionist, and then I moved into doing the pre-qualifying because one of the recruiters decided to quit and not tell anybody and not show up to work. So my boss was like, you're on.
I love it.
Yeah. And did that for 2 years, and then quit, and then went into the first business full time. And in that first business, I learned so many skills. I learned content marketing. I learned how to pitch. I learned how to get media attention. That's why people look at me and they're like, you've done a lot. And I'm like, I have. I learned how to do media tours. I would get hired as a spokesperson. Like when TransUnion has a new product, the videos exist. So I'm not saying anything people don't know. You could go find them on YouTube. But like TransUnion hires me as a spokesperson, and then I have to do 25 TV and radio interviews in a small studio in New York in a 4-hour period.
Wow.
So yeah, I also learned how to be under the gun.
Wow.
Yeah. So those first 8 years, like, they taught me a lot. But then what ended up happening was I couldn't scale that. So like there was only so much I could do to make money doing it. And then the other thing that started happening is I started having a bit of an internal conflict because the ironic part that happens when you work in finance is you learn how fucked up the financial system is. So you're like, you can follow all the rules and still get nowhere and still get screwed. So I was starting to have a little bit of internal conflict with that. And I was like, I don't think I can be here anymore from like a values perspective. So people had been asking me for years, how'd you build the first business? And I started teaching them. That was in 2017. And then it was interesting because I had tried to make the transition before into coaching. So this had been on my mind for a minute. And I did a presentation in front of a group of 200 women. I had 60 calls booked from that presentation, and all 60 of them told me no. Oh yeah, in like a 30-day period. No, when I tell people I've been through the ringer, I've been through the ringer. That's why when they give me excuses, I don't give a shit.
Wow.
I was rejected today. Okay, go get rejected another 60 times.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm like, sorry, not sorry. Like, it's just a rite of passage. Deal with it. So I had tried before, but then this time I was actually successful. I was taught a funnel, but like I didn't even finish building it because at that point I realized I was actually pretty good at sales. I just needed like a tweak or two, and I actually had a decent offer this time.
That helps.
It helps, right? Versus before, I just started emailing and picking up the phone, and I was just like closing people left and right.
I love it.
Yeah. So that was in 2017. And since then, we realized that the reason our clients get such insane results is because we actually teach sales. So a lot of people get marketing and manifesting, which I love both, right? But there is something to be said for actual conversation skills and actual closing skills and actual objection handling. No amount of energetic work is going to make up for a lack of skill set.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you're mentioning manifesting. What's your take on that?
So I studied, I was a client of David Nagel's for about a year. So we went pretty deep into universal laws, and I love them. This stuff has been around forever. It's like the laws of gravity. It's working whether you realize it or not. You can fight it all you want, but it's still here. So I like what I learned from him. So I'm just going to take it from him, right? There's about 7 universal laws. And I have a few favorites. So one everybody calls manifestation or law of attraction is actually a secondary law to the law of vibration. So the law of vibration is everything vibrates at a certain level, and like things vibrate together, right? So what happens with law of vibration is that it's thoughts, beliefs, and actions. All 3 of those things have to be in alignment or shit's not working. It's also one of the laws. There's like 6 others.
Wow.
Right? One of them being cause and effect. So in the case of sales, you want an effect, more money. The cause is sales activity.
Yeah.
So the things work together, you know what I mean? Or law of polarity is my favorite. This is the one that fucks everybody up, right? I could draw it if you need me to, so just let me know if you need me to draw it, because sometimes the diagram works for people, but I know this is also in podcast form, so that might not work, so I'll do my best. But basically, the law of polarity states that everything exists on a spectrum, which we can see that in nature. You have day and you have night, and you have the spectrum of light in between. You have colors, you have black and white, and the spectrum in between. You have male, female, and now we're realizing there might be spectrums in between, right? Everything has shades and everything's on a spectrum, and money's no different, right? So wealth and poverty exist on a spectrum. They're on the same bar. They're just on opposite ends of the bar.
I love that.
So what happens, right, is let's say you're minus $20,000 and you're like, oh my God, where am I going to get this $20,000? The cool thing about the law of polarity is that the solution to your problem exists in the same time and space as the problem itself.
Oh.
There's just 2 problems, right? And this is where humans get stuck. Us humans get stuck, right? Number 1, a lot of times we can't see the solution because of all that programming.
Okay.
So that's number 1. So that's why we have to do the internal work and the deprogramming and all the stuff that we have to work on our money. And this applies to anything. I'm just using money as an example because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs. So we can't see it, That's part of the problem because of all the muck we have in our minds, our subconscious, all that kind of stuff. Now, here's a second problem. Let's say you do see it. A lot of times, it's going to cost you something. It's going to make you uncomfortable. Sometimes it's taking on debt. Sometimes it's working with somebody else. Sometimes it's a difficult conversation. Sometimes it's, oh my God, I have to pick up the phone and do sales activity today. Whatever it is, usually, not always, but usually, it looks like something that's going to make you uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I feel like with a lot of the manifesting and stuff like that, like these things just very conveniently don't get talked about.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. You only hear about just the one, like the law of attraction. Just to think
and it's not the only one. And then they make it seem like you don't have to do anything.
Yes, it drives me insane. I had to stop having those women on my podcast because I literally was like pulling my hair out. I feel like it's somewhat deceitful.
It is, but I also have realized, and maybe this goes to the hologram situation we were talking about earlier today. So I sent an email out to my list about a year ago, and I said, if you've been duped by a coach, what made you buy from this person? I'm not here to judge, right? I'm just curious. And a lot of things came out. One of them was like branding, and I'm like, you make decisions based on people's branding, but whatever. Right? They looked pretty. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I know I said I wouldn't judge, but there's definitely some judgment on that one. Right? But the other one was like, oh, there's spirituality, there's this, there's that. And there was a name, and I won't say who because A, I know them, and B, I thought this was interesting, that kept coming up over and over again. And I was like, that's so interesting because I've been in that person's programs and I very explicitly heard them say that they worked their asses off. Yes. Multiple times I heard them say this. So do some of them, is it a little bit deceitful? Maybe, but I also feel like people hear what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of both going on.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the, I've interviewed close to 500 women on this podcast now. And there was one interview where I almost lost my shit. Because she was speaking a lot of this woo-woo stuff and manifestation and just staying calm and letting the money flow to you and all of this, which is fine.
Yeah.
But then during the duration of the conversation, she accidentally, or maybe not, let us know that her husband is extremely wealthy.
Yeah, there's also that.
So it's like, dude, yeah, anyone could do that. Anybody could sit and wait and manifest and just wait for ones that we're gonna purchase, right? Like we used to say that when we would go door to door, like anyone could go out, a monkey could go out and sell one with a sign on his back because that was the one that was looking to buy it that day anyways. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the way that it felt. And it's like, to me, that's just, I got so angry. I like stayed calm, but in my mind, I was like, you can't tell people that. You can't tell women who are like paycheck to paycheck. You can't tell women who are MLMs and their husbands are out working 3 jobs while they're at home taking care of babies.
Right. And there's also systemic issues. There's a good finance person here can tell you, right?
Yeah.
No, there's some stuff that's real. That being said, right? I don't know. It gets into a weird conversation, right? Because maybe you want to speak to this because I know you've been through some stuff, right? It gets into this weird conversation sometimes where it's like, yes, and you also can't wait for the government or this or that. Like, yeah, it's fucked up. Like, we all know this, but you also can't keep blaming outside circumstances as for your circumstances, if that makes sense. Like, at some point, there is value in terms of seeing things from a different perspective. There is value in being like, I'm not going to blame anything. Even if this is true, I'm not going to blame it, right? I feel like that's a nuanced thing where it's like I can acknowledge that something is complete shit and still not blame it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So there's value in that, but I feel like that's a nuanced conversation that it just goes, I don't know if it's going over people's heads or if people just aren't talking about it. I'm not sure which one it is. My team was actually telling me earlier today, they're like, Amanda, you need to talk about this stuff way more often.
Yeah.
Because you actually have like a deep understanding of it and can see it from all these different perspectives, where all these other people are just getting played.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate the way that you said this, as far as you said that there was 3 things. There's marketing, manifesting, and then sales and close. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have all 3 in order for the business to work. It isn't just one of those, number 1. And
No.
number 2, when I asked you for more information on manifesting, kind of curious in my own way, smirking underneath.
Did I pass the test?
You're like, yes, manifesting, but there's 7 different laws in it. Like, I didn't even know that. So
Yeah.
like, where are all the other 7 laws that need to be spoken about more openly than just the one where you sit and wait?
You can find them in the Kabbalion and in the Hermetic Principles.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you
I
can go
love
find
that.
these things.
I love that. But this is the one that's talked about the most. So this is what people are doing. They're just like, oh, I'm manifesting. I'm just going
It's probably the one that sells the easiest too. Let's be real. But then that's also like, you know, I did a post the other day. I'm like, do we blame bad coaches or a stupid market? Like, which one do we, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or even just human nature of being
Or human nature. Yeah, it's also
fearful.
human nature of wanting to avoid hard things. Which
Wait,
I'm a psycho and I don't like to avoid hard things, apparently. Like, I just go in, rip it out, and get it done. But I realized most humans don't do that. But I didn't really realize that until more recently. I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Just stay in the same puddle of shit I'm in if it's going to be hard either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard either way. Yeah. That's the story of my life. People ask,
I know. Yeah.
why don't you just stay? Or why don't you just, because it's hard either way. Like, might as well have what I want and do that hard thing versus the other hard thing and be absolutely miserable, you know?
Yes. So that's how I feel about it. Like, I'm super into energetics. I'm super into I mean, I just talked about EFT tapping, like, you know, and I think part of what goes on is the polarization of it all too, right? So I've had to learn from mentors who were like super into that stuff. And then I've also had to step away from that, and it was helpful to a degree. And then I also had to step into them and learn some damn skills. But then those guys are on the exact opposite spectrum, being like, all that stuff is bullshit, but it's not true. So it's like both camps are right and wrong.
I love it.
And it took a long time for me to find mentors who could integrate the two very well.
Yeah. You know what this is kind of reminding me of is when people ask, like, what's the best way to make sales? And it's like all the ways. Like, you have to do all the things. It isn't just, because if it was just one way, then everyone just do that one way and there wouldn't be a lot of ways. But you have to do all the things in order for there to be an influx of cash flow coming your way.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. I love
it's
that.
The same, you know, and I think there's also like very black and white thinking. It's what we were talking, like circling back around, people forgetting that it doesn't have to be black and white, right or wrong, either or. Everything's kind of on a spectrum and pretty much both and.
Yeah, definitely. Shannon says, I enjoy learning as many modalities as possible and figure out what works from all of it for me.
Exactly.
I love that.
But that's the part people forget is the what works for me part. Okay. And that's a very interesting thing I've seen happening where people are forgetting they have self-agency.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have quite a few people here watching live, and I'm certain on the replay. Can you let everybody know exactly what you do and who should be contacting you if they're looking to work with you?
Everybody, because everybody needs sales training. Let's be real. So what we do is we specialize in all things sales. So we help people with their sales process. So we teach a 5-step sales process. We also teach the skills that are required in each step of the process. So part of what sets us apart is we'll actually do sales role play with our clients. And we'll teach them things like closing, objection handling, basically all the stuff that the manifesting coaches told you you don't have to do, and you're realizing that's not true.
Yes, girl. Thank you. I'm going to cut and snip that, and that's going to be my front and center.
Please do and send it to me.
I love it. Absolutely.
Right. My favorite ones are like close high ticket sales without talking to a soul. And I'm like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Drives me crazy.
You're just playing to people's fears that they don't want to talk to people to get their money, but the system doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
That's all that is. Also, you did sales for 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyway. I could go off on a soapbox about that. So we teach the actual skills, the actual people skills, and we really break it down. Like we will dissect your sales scripts with you. It's to the point where if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time with referral partners, how do I have this conversation? I'm like, sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3. Like that's how deep we go into dissecting it, which sets us apart because a lot of other people are like, just get them on your podcast and flip them into a client. But like, that's as far as the training goes in terms of how to do that.
Exactly.
So we'll go into like the actual conversation pieces then. So that's where to get started if that's where you need help. We also are now helping people with their sales systems and automations, because once you start getting to a certain level, and we've seen it start as low as 200,000 around there, once you start getting, past 6 figures, now we have a systems problem. And so, for example, I can't be sending 100 text messages a day. If a referral partner sends us 100 leads in a day, I don't have time to be sending 100 text messages.
Yeah.
I need to be on stuff like this.
Yeah.
So how do we automate as much of that as possible? And now we're starting to help our clients who are ready for sales systems. And what's unique about us is that most people who teach systems only do it from a marketing lens, but they don't actually understand sales. So you'll agree with me on this because you were in sales, right? I'm sure you know, right, that like 3 emails when somebody hits your email list is not enough.
Yeah.
You need text messages, you need a phone call, you need a video email in the first 10 days.
Yeah.
Because that's when then they're hottest, right? So it's looking at your systems, but from a sales brain, and looking at your CRM and making sure that's all set up and stuff like that. And then once we're done with that, then we'll probably move into teams, because I tried moving into teams, but then realized everybody's systems were trash.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're like, my team sucks. I'm like, well, they can't work with this. So.
Totally get that.
Yeah. So yeah, it depends where you are, right? If you're like, dang, I need to really nail down a sales process and the sales skills, that's bucket number 1. If you're past that, you've got something that's working, and now it's like, okay, I'm exhausted, I can't handle all these leads, they need to get worked, then it's bucket 2.
Beautiful.
Yep.
And where can people find you? Where do you hang out?
AmandaAbella.com. I also live on Facebook. I'll make sure to tag me, so I make sure to share this out, because I'm known for going live almost every day. So YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places, just my name.
I love it. Why do you do what you do?
Oh my God, that is such a good question, because I feel like that's also evolved, morphed, and changed over the years. I feel like that doesn't stay the same either. Because if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, I would have been like, to help women make more money. But if you ask me now, especially after all that stuff I went through, I'd be like, so we can have more sustainable businesses and some more peace.
Ooh. Yeah. I like that word, peace.
Peace. Oh, right?
Yeah. Because it is many times, and it's an up and down.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lack of peace.
Yeah, but when you learn to regulate your nervous system, that I got a crash course in, then it's a lot easier. Things don't bother you as much anymore. There's that critical thinking. But I've learned that a big piece of that is just a lot of women have built businesses where they don't even have the space to regulate their nervous systems. Yeah. That's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah. I was going to say 100%. Well, this has been absolutely delightful. I love it when we have guests on that I could just talk to forever. So this has been fantastic. I so appreciate you taking some time of your day to sit down and share some of your awesomeness with us. I know I took a lot of notes. I certainly hope those watching live and on the replay jotted down some goodness on the napkin while they're eating lunch today. Closing thoughts.
This has been coming up a lot, and intuitively, I just got the hit to say this. I think people need to remember that they're made of the same stuff as the cosmos. That part the woo people have right, but science backs that up. So we're literally made of the same stuff. So a lot of these stories about the self-doubt, oh my God, I can't do this. How can I ask for this much money? All that kind of stuff. Like, you are made of the same stuff as the cosmos. Like, why are you exempt from the universe or nature? Like, the only difference is we can say no.
Ah, I love that.
I think if people remember that, there would be a lot less muck in our brains.
Yes. Oh, that feels powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us. So appreciate you. For those of you watching live or on the replay, if you resonate with Amanda Abella and all the goodness that she shared, make sure to check out her website. It is right below her face area, and it is also in the description below in a clickable link. She hangs out predominantly on Facebook, so go find her. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. And
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for those of you watching. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this show and love content like this, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. If you want to jump on the podcast, check us out at hernation.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others as